Let's get salty!
Everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and this is pretty well overdue. It's time to talk about what the hell is wrong with Druid. Why is it driving everybody crazy? Seems like every time they have a playable archetype, everybody wants it nerfed right away, and I'm kind of on that train as well. And as we'll talk about, I've kind of played a lot of Druid. You'd think I would be more excited about Druid being good and all of that, or busted or whatever. Right now, tier 1 ramp Druid. What neutral card are we banning next? We'll talk about all of that. If you enjoy the content on the channel, you feel like I've earned your subscription, please hit that sub button down below. Give the video a like. It helps us out a ton as we're on the road to 75,000 subscribers. So I tweeted this out again, like, what neutral card are we banning next? You know, ironically, because we saw in the last month in standard alone, we had Gadgets to Auctioneer banned. Shortly after that, the Jailer banned, and it's still like out of control. It's still really solid, and in a way that's just really unfun to face. And we're not even going to talk about Wild, where Tony got banned from there very recently, and Quest Druid's completely broken in Wild. There's some, you know, overarching problems between these things, but yeah, it is pretty darn ridiculous. If you take a look at HS replay, across all ranks, Druid is only 4th, but again, that's not really the best indicator. Taking a look at High Legend, see Ramp Druid number 1. I like it still has like Tony Druid, even though it's not literally not a deck at standard, more the HS replay number is not super awesome. And Drum Druid's up there too, another very scammy deck. And Meaty got rank 1 legend again. We had him getting rank 1 legend a while ago. He did it again with Yogg Druid. It's now more than just a few games sample size. It's just legitimately really busted, and it's not like a deck is not allowed to be good, right? Like, if the deck's good, well, who cares, right? And if you take a look at the meta, it's not like this complete outlier. It's just one of the best decks, although the meta is very much warped around it. It's just the fact that every Druid archetype lately that sees play just infuriates people. It's maddening, and I totally understand why, as you all will just go into what exactly Druid is doing. And I do want to clarify, I have over 9,000 Druid wins. I have 1,000 wins on my EU account as well, 10,000 total. The only class I have more wins with is Mage, and it's kind of crazy to me that even I can't stand what's going on. But if we take a look at, we'll look at, I guess, Meaty's deck here, I have it made up, is, what does it do? What is so infuriating about facing a Druid? Well, they typically don't do a lot in the early game, but these days, not only do they kind of sit back and not do a lot for the first only couple of turns, basically by turns like 5 and 6, they're already drawing their entire deck, and they're doing it for like no mana. And then if you ever try and develop a board now against Druid, which is supposed to have the weaknesses of like basically board clears and hard removal, you get punished by Yogg. If you go for one big target, you get punished by a mind control. If you go wide, you get punished by the whole like mass hysteria thing. But not only that, I think the thing that drives people the craziest is the fact that you're just sitting there watching them play 1,000 cards. It's reminiscent of like Miracle Road to an extent, where they're playing all their 0 mana cards, where it's 0 mana draw 1 with Aquatic Form, it's 0 mana draw 2 with spread the word, and then they can you know, tutor out their Embrace of Nature to get that nourish, right? And then ramp up. So they have more mana than you, they've drawn more cards than you, with cards like Frost Slow to Ceiling, they get a ridiculous amount of armor. So unless you kill them really quickly, there's not a lot you could do. Even OTK decks are struggling against it. And basically right now, the way to compete against Druid, swarm them down and all of that. But even that, it's really hard because Yogg has been that kind of, that's what's really breaking things right now in Standard and Wild. Outside of just like this specific deck, I wanted to talk about Druid in general, in the fact that it has felt like a very long time since any Druid deck has resembled anything healthy that people don't want to see immediately nerfed, that there's not a million Reddit threads or Twitter threads or YouTube comments complaining about. And the thing that I feel like they've kind of forgotten with Druid is not only is it, you know, a class that's supposed to struggle to remove the board, but I feel like it's not supposed to cheat that much mana. You might be saying that's a little bit silly, but if you take a look at old Druid cards, back in the day, Innervate did give 2 mana crystals, and that was busted. It got nerfed for that reason. But for the most part, Druid was about ramping. Ramping to me is the healthy version or healthier version of mana cheat, where you spend mana, invest in it early on a wild growth, which was 2 mana, nourish, which is its original state. It did get nerfed to 6 at some point. They reverted it, but you would invest that mana. And there wasn't a ton of card draw. You just kind of went into it, and your card draw, like Ancient of Lore, which was a 5/5. It's harder to do these videos now. They buffed all these cards, but it would draw 2 cards. And that got nerfed because it was so good. Think about that. They nerfed this card because it drew too much. But if you look historically at the cards that generate mana or created mana for Druid, a lot of them were just about investing, you know, your mana to ramp later, like a biology project, which not the greatest example. You do get those mana crystals right away. Lightning Bloom, which became broken, now it's refresh. You have like your Darnassus Aspirant, your Breath of Dreams, your Greedy Sprites, laughably bad card of Grove Tender, which ended up just basically being a mill card. You really wanted to ramp really fast. You could with Astral Communion, but you gave up your little hand. But even recently, like Overgrowth, right? Like you're ramping, you're gaining those crystals. Twig, which was insane eventually, but not right away because there's no way to break it. Once he could break it reliably, got nuts. But even then, before then, one of the Mali Druids I played a lot, it involved you having to swing 5 times to set that up, right? That wasn't always the easiest thing in the world. Guff, which, I mean, my god, is just absolutely ridiculous. And Kun that refresh it. But if you note, the cards that have really been like the hyper mana cheat, that are more recent cards. You're looking at your Nubricon, which got nerfed almost immediately because it was so frustrated. Had Celestial Alignment, which got nerfed multiple times. Again, mass mana cheating like we had never seen before, and led to like just some of the worst archetypes ever. Again, led to just incessant complaining, just the worst style. And again, Druid Enjoyer, I never could stand any alignment deck. I never enjoyed playing it and still don't to this day. Have your Funnel Cake, which is seen play on and off so far. The Auctioneer build used it, and Contaminate Lasher, which got nerfed already. There's already a bunch of like quick mana cheat cards that weren't necessarily like, that's just not the style of ramp Druid normally has had. There are the exceptions, the floops, gloops, and all of that, but it feels like lately, within the year, we have seen multiple mana refresh cards that are just outright crazy, that didn't used to see that style, and I feel like that's what's enabling all this stuff, is the cheap mana refresh. The Lifebinder Gifts of the World, it's 2 mana Thorison, like kind of ridiculous. And the other thing that of course enables like a ton of it that I don't see enough talk about is like spread the word. 0 mana draw 2 into more 0 mana draw cards, into aquatic form, again 0 mana draw, and all that stuff costs no mana, and you're buffing your Yogg, you're doing all the broken stuff. Druid never used to have the greatest card draw until Ultimate Infestation happened, then all hell broke loose, Branching Path, Furious Howl, all that stuff. But I don't know, it just feels like they have gone from that more of like healthy style of ramp, where you go from your nourishes, you go from your wild growths to, you just have your 1 nourish, and then you just cheat 1,000,000 mana with your refreshes, with your other mana cheat, with your 0 mana card draw. The main issue is all these archetypes has been, there's just too much mana cheat. And if you look at that old like developer insights thing that went over like the strength and weaknesses of class, mana generation has been a strength for Druid. I would like to think that means not cheating, more like ramping, growth, that type of generation. But the weaknesses of destroying big minions and board clear are literally not present right now. All these neutrals are creating that situation, and since they're all spell-based, they're enabled by broken 0 mana spells, and it all just kind of goes together. And it's just crazy to look at the Druid archetypes, like almost every expansion just feel like they have to get nerfed. The Anubricons, the second this became playable, Womper, that was also super toxic, had to get nerfed. Again, mass mana cheat on this one, another example of that. And even looking back when Alterac Valley came out with Guff being one of the most busted cards, what was the other thing that really made it work very well? Scale of Onyxia, again, kind of a board clear, kind of shoring up that weakness. So what am I getting at with Druid? Why does it feel so frustrating? Because it's a class that's built around breaking one of the most fundamental rules of Hearthstone. You got to spend mana to play your cards, or you have to, you know, your cards cost a certain amount. And when that class basically gets to abuse that, and they get all the other upsides that are not supposed to be with the class, board clears, mass card draw, hard removal, it kind of comes together for the ultimate frustrating experience of like, you just feel helpless. If they draw well, you're just screwed. There's nothing you can do. And I just feel like to me, and I don't say this a lot, I feel like the team has completely lost touch with what Druid really should be about. And to me, that is ramping. Absolutely. Ramping with your nourishes, ramping with your wild growths and all that. But just ramping into big stuff that costs mana, that doesn't like cheat more mana. I just feel like there shouldn't be mass refreshing. There shouldn't be mass 0 mana card draw on a class like Druid. It just fundamentally to me doesn't make sense. And we're seeing it just break the game. Literally every time Druid has been playable the past like year or two, it's just the most miserable experience. And for someone who has over 9,000 Druid wins, I have barely played the class in that period of time. I found it so frustrating, not only to face, but I don't find it fun to play as someone who loves the Druid class. It doesn't even speak to me as a Druid player. It just feels wrong. It's like a combination of like Miracle Rogue and Druid. It's just not what I expect from the class. I like ramping into big stupid idiots. I don't like ramping into Exodia infinite mana cheat combos that deal 1 billion damage unless I'm summoning a pretty cool dragon and then pew-pewing, because yeah, Malagos Druid, my favorite archetype of all time, which again, I just spend 9 mana on this, unless they flourished it, and that's mass mana cheating. Maybe it goes back even farther than I thought, but it is pretty darn bad these days. Let me know what you guys think about Druid. I'm looking forward to read those comments, and what you think needs to be improved for the class. Do they need to ban some more neutrals? I really do think it's just the mass mana cheat and the 0 mana card draw is just way too much right now, and we're just seeing it create mass frustration. There's a lot of mass going on. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and stay salty, my friends.